Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon's meeting of the Development Control and Regulatory Board. As usual, the meeting will be broadcast live via the public. For those not able to watch the footage live, the webcast will be available for viewing on YouTube after the meeting. Due to the current situation, all the other members of the board officers presenting today are joining online. Can I please ask that all officers and members mute their microphone until they wish or are invited to speak. When you are speaking, please turn your video on. Ewan will now go around the room and ask everyone to introduce themselves. I have received apologies from Michael Wyatt, and I have been informed that Mrs. Louise Richardson is subbing for Dan Harrison, who's so if you could go around and ask people to introduce themselves, we're grateful. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Bentley, are you there?
Yes, hi Ewan, it's Ian
Mr.
Bentley.
Bentley.
Yeah, I can see and hear you. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Michael Charlesworth. Mr. Charlesworth.
Present, Ewan. Yes, Ewan.
Okay, I'll come back. Thank you. Mr. Coxon's here. Mr. Bill Crooks, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here, Ewan. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Gamble.
Present. Thank you.
Mr. Gillard.
Present, Ewan.
Thank you. Mr. Licorice.
Reporting for duty, Ewan.
Thank you. Mr. Phillimore.
Present, see and hear, thanks, Ewan.
Mrs. Richards.
I can see and hear you, Ewan, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Louise Richardson.
I'm here, see and hear you, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sheehan.
Yes, I'm here, Ewan. I can hear you fine, but I'm not seeing you. I can see the box which says Team Sparkano, if that's you.
Okay, can you see Mr. Coxon?
No.
Okay. Do you know what the problem is? We'll have a look at that in a second.
Okay.
I'll just continue with the list. Mrs. Wright. Maggie
Yes,
Wright.
Ewan, present, and I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much for that. We'll move on to the agenda then. Item number 1 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2020. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of December 2020 are taken as read, confirmed and signed, but with an amendment which has been pointed out. If you look on page 4 of the agenda pack, where it says resolved the definitive map modification order, it should read Glen Oak Spinney, but it's printed in the agenda as Gold Spinney. So with that minor amendment, you're all agreed.
Yeah, I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Janice. All in favour then?
Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item number 2 then is questions from the public. No questions have been received. Item 3, there are no questions from members. Item 4, there are no urgent items. Item 5, declarations of interest. Has anyone got anything to declare at this moment? It is noted that all members who are also members of a parish, town, district council or liaison committee will have a personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Well, no one's indicated that they've got an interest, so we'll move on. Item number 6, presentation of petitions. I understand there's no petitions been received. Item number 7, which is really why we're here today, is the planning application by A.H. Pick and Son, proposed erection of poultry units and anaerobic digesting facilities, Manor Farm, Hungerton Lane, Beeby. The person that's going to present this afternoon is Nick Bowden. So Nick, if you're here and present, if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, I'd be grateful.
That's fine. Ewan, have you got the presentation up?
Yeah, it's just coming on the screen now.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Right. The application proposes the erection of 2 agricultural buildings to accommodate 50,000 broiler birds each, with a total of 100,000 birds, and an anaerobic digester plant, together with related infrastructure, access arrangements, and landscaping. The proposal is EIA development and is supported by an environmental statement. A broadly similar scheme was approved by the application in 2016, but the permission was not implemented and has since lapsed. The application site is located within the open countryside, approximately 5 miles from the centre of Leicester, and between the villages of Beeby, Keam and Hungerton. It is set immediately south of Hungerton Lane, largely among agricultural fields. The proposed new buildings are located at the main entrance to Manor Farm. The farm is formed of the main farmhouse, 3 workers' cottages in separate ownership, and a complex of modern farm buildings, including barn, grain stores and equipment shed. The access track from the farm leads to Hungerton Lane, and the development proposed in this instance is set adjacent to the track and the road. The area in general is mainly formed of working farmland in arable crop production, although some livestock are also present. There are a scattering of homes and other farms throughout the general area, with the nearest, excepting Manor Farm cottages, being set some 500 metres to the west. The area is Grade 3 classification agricultural land, but is not subject to any specific planning designations other than open countryside. The site and surroundings are all located within flood zone 1. The site is relatively exposed to the road and can be readily seen from the public highway. However, the distance from neighbours can be seen in the aerial imagery in this slide. This slide's from photos of the site when viewed from the road. The 2 poultry sheds would each measure 104 metres by 25 metres, with a maximum height of 6 metres, containing a total of 100,000 birds. The anaerobic digester would lie to the southwest of the poultry sheds, consisting of a storage shed, digester tank, digestate store, a slurry and buffer tank, silage clamps, combined heat and power unit and a flare stack. The storage shed would be 30 by 25 metres, with a height to the eaves of 9.5 metres. Around the complex of buildings, the site would be laid to hard standing, landscaped and feature screening bunds. In terms of site operation, the facility would operate 7 chicken crops a year, each of 49 days, including decant, washdown and restocking. Waste products will be taken to the fully contained digester before the biogas is burnt in the CHP plant to generate heat for the facility and provide energy for use on site or otherwise exported to the national grid. This process ensures a significant odour betterment over traditional disposal of digestate outdoors, as it is an in-vessel closed system operation. Remaining digestate can then be recycled as soil nutrient in place of typical manure spreading. Off-site works include the formation of 5 passing places along the proposed route for HGVs between the site and Keam. These will be formed along the part of the highway where the road is at its narrowest. Vehicles would travel along Hungerton Lane until Keam. From this point, they would access the strategic road network at the A47 near Bilsden, with most vehicles likely to be heading towards the junction with the M1. This route largely avoids passing through villages and past homes, albeit with some exceptions around Keam and another number of other small rural properties. In terms of vehicle movements, there will be 70 highway movements per 49-day cycle connected with the chicken rearing, or 490 per year. This will be heavily concentrated at the depopulation and restocking stages. The anaerobic digester will generate 717 movements per year, of which slightly over 50% will be via the public highway at 387 movements per annum. The others will be via tractor over the applicant's own land. In total, this equates to 877 movements per annum on the highway. There have been a total of 97 objections to the application, with a number of other comments following the finalisation of the report. Key points noted by neighbours have been summarised and responded to as part of the report. The main concerns raised have revolved around traffic movements along rural roads, odour from site operations, and questions relating to the environmental merits of the scheme. For clarity, it is noted the main source of odour for an operation such as this is contained due to the waste products from the digestate being kept within a closed system. Vehicle movements will, on average, be 2.5 per day, 2.4 per day, my apologies, on the public highway, although these will not be distributed evenly throughout the year, so there will be peak days of high numbers and more frequently days where there will be negligible movements. In terms of the environmental impact, the development may be regarded as low carbon due to the energy generation being from organic sources, in addition to recovering waste gases which would otherwise be emitted into the atmosphere. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement relating to vehicle routing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. We've got a series of speakers this afternoon, 6 in total, I think. The first speaker I've got on my list, which members should have the same list, is Vicky Dennison of BB. Vicky, are you there? Vicky Dennison?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now. Yes, thank you. You've got 3 minutes, Vicky, to speak. Would you like to start when you're ready? And Ewan will be doing the time in the committee clerk, and he'll tell you when the 3 minutes is up. So if you'd like to start when you can, please.
Okay. My name's Vicky Dennison and I'm Treasurer of BB Parish Council, and I'm asking the committee to defer any decision until the draft Section 106 agreement has been made available to the public. If we start with the highways, I've looked at your profiles and that shows that most of you on the committee fully understand the problems and the issues relating to transportation. And you all seem to represent areas which have a higher density of population and industry than this area. But I would please ask you to be mindful that nearly 1 million chickens per annum produced from this area is a massive change to the location. And as been mentioned, there have been 97 individual comments from the local population, which is only about 550. My main point is that all guidance and your own protocol stipulate that a draft Section 106 is a pre-application matter, i.e. at stage 1. We are now at stage 5 and nobody in the population has seen this Section 106 draft. Yet it is the most important document that covers the most important issue to the local people. The applicant, the poultry provider, the construction companies, they're all familiar with what would be required in a section 106. Yet here we are at stage 5, and there is no information as to how it will be regulated, how it will be monitored, and how it will be enforced. We are nervous because the applicant himself has breached planning and been issued with an enforcement notice. So there is no confidence that he is best placed to enforce others with regard to any transgressions. So on that basis, I would ask, when you are doing the draft, or before it's completed, that you do include a heads of terms, which includes a liaison committee, however small, that would help boost the local confidence in monitoring the traffic, etc. So finally, and I know that you will, but I'm asking you to be minded of your official code of conduct with regard to involving the public and the transparency. And I again ask you to defer this decision until this draft, Section 106, has been made a public document on the public register for the locals to view. The committee has absolutely nothing to lose, but there is everything to gain by circulating this document prior to the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. If you just stay on the line for a couple of minutes, I just want to ask any member want to ask you anything regarding clarification just said this afternoon. Any members have got any questions? I'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you, Vic. Speaker is Colin Perks from. You have 3 minutes, Colin. Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can indeed. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I have 2 areas of concern due to the effects of the HGV movements. Firstly, it's to do with climate change. The Leicestershire County Council Environment Strategy for 2018 to 30 states under vision, we will play our full part to protect the environment of Leicestershire. We will tackle climate change and embed environmental sustainability into what we do. In May 2019, the council declared a climate emergency, stating the aim of making Leicestershire carbon neutral by 2030. If this application is approved, we've already heard that there will be 70 HGV journeys to and from the poultry farm each cycle. That's 490 a year, mostly travelling between the farm and the processing plant in Northamptonshire, a distance of 60 miles. That means there will be almost 30,000 miles of HGV journeys. We know that HGVs have levels of emission of greenhouse gases greater than anything else on the road. And my question to you is, how is this compatible with the County Council's stated aim of tackling climate change? And I would ask that, again, that you defer any judgment on this until a review is done of the effects of the HGVs on climate change. My second area of concern, sorry I'm rushing, but I know I've only got 3 minutes. My second area of concern is for the number of tractor-trailer movements to and from the anaerobic digester. The environmental statement accompanying the application states that many of these, that's the tractor-trailer movements, will directly replace existing movements. So in reality, movements on the local road network will remain comparable. However, there's no statistical analysis or other evidence provided in that report to substantiate this claim. The prediction is that there will be 1,362 tractor movements per year to the AD to provide feedstock removed digestate. There are no figures for current tractor movements to compare with this. The AD will be working continuously, but the poultry unit will only provide 10% of the feedstock needed, and the remainder will be brought in from farms in the surrounding area. A large proportion will be energy crops grown on Mr. Pick's farms outside Beeby. This, I believe, will generate an uncharacteristically large additional volume of heavy farm traffic travelling to and from Manor Farm. Much of this will pass across Beeby Crossroads, which is dangerous and busy junction with problematic lines of vision, and that was described in the highways report, that there are problems with the line of vision. Hungerton Lane has been badly damaged over the years by these heavy tractor trailer units moving up and down, and I feel that permission should not be granted for this planning application.
Thank you. Thank you. You're just about in time. 3 minutes. I've no indications from any members to ask you any questions on what you said. So I'll say thank you for obviously calling in this afternoon, and obviously you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the meeting. Our next speaker is Alistair Clements from Hungerton Parish Council. Alistair, are you online?
I am online. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed, very clearly, thank you. You've got 3 minutes, Alistair, so obviously begin when you're ready, and Ewan is doing the timing, so he'll tell you when to stop speaking. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board. The environmental statement is fundamental to this application and material in all aspects. My qualifications are in ecology and agricultural science. I've written many environmental statements and find that this one falls short of accepted standards. Firstly, the procedural irregularities. The environmental impact assessment is based on a scoping opinion that was prepared for a previous application. Secondly, the scope of the environmental impact assessment is incomplete. For example, alternatives to the anaerobic digester have not been considered. Thirdly, the environmental impact assessment should systematically assess all likely hazards, any risks arising, and any mitigating measures required. It does not. For example, storing manure and slurries could contaminate nearby Barkby Brook, yet the applicant denies the existence of any nearby watercourses. Fourthly, any uncertainties should be highlighted, yet none are. It is stated, for example, that there are no historical records of great-crested newts and no ponds within 500 metres. This is incorrect. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, so this is actually an uncertainty. The report in front of you states that the proposed anaerobic digester is a waste facility. Is it really? Disposal of farmyard waste is not an existing problem, so the digester provides no environmental benefit. The 124 hectares of crops grown to feed the digester are clearly not waste. Even if it were a waste facility, it would contravene Council Policy W5 to locate it at Manor Farm. The exception of overriding need does not apply because manures from chicken sheds can simply be composted. The development also contravenes Policy DM6 because of the loss of arable land that could be providing 1,000 tonnes of wheat every year. So if not a waste facility, should Charnwood Policy EV41 on locating renewable energy schemes be applied? The applicant says the proposal is green, yet there are no numbers to support this. What about the large quantities of tractor fuel required to grow the energy crops? Is this consistent with the County Council's Climate Emergency Declaration of 2019? What about alternative technologies like solar arrays or a wind turbine, which use less land, contribute equally to the low-carbon economy, and avoid the risks of digesters, which have a history of frequent accidents? In summary, the application is procedurally flawed. The full facts required by decision makers are not presented. There is no evidence that this is a genuinely sustainable development. The proposal is non-compliant with local policies on location and land use. We submit that there are compelling grounds for rejecting this application today.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Thank you very much indeed. I've no indication of any member wanting to ask you a question of what you've said this afternoon, so I'll thank you for your contribution for calling in this afternoon. The next speaker I've got on my list is Graham Clark, who is the agent, Berries. Mr. Clark, are you?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me okay and see me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. Yeah. You've been allotted 5 minutes to speak, so if you'd like to begin when you're ready. Ewan will do the timing as I've said before, and we'll let you know if you run over your 5 minutes. So please begin.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Graham Clark, the planning agent for the application at Manor Farm. As you are aware, this application is the resubmission of the same proposal that was approved by the council in 2016. The application expired due to the length of time it took to secure the required accreditation from Ofgem, which is needed for the AD plant and associated electricity supply. The accreditation is now in place, along with an available grid connection and the required environmental permit from the Environment Agency. The poultry units and associated AD plant are required to secure the long-term future of the farm business and to meet the existing and growing demand of chickens. Manor Farm includes 200 hectares of arable land that is tenanted. This land forms part of the Thornbury urban housing extension, which will deliver 4,500 homes in the longer term. Given that this land will not be available to the farm in the future, alternative farm production is required, which is why the poultry enterprise is proposed. As such, this will help secure the long-term viability of the farm business. It is recognised that applications of this nature are contentious and raise legitimate concerns. This is why the application is EIA development and detailed information must be submitted with the application, including a series of technical reports covering highways, odour, noise, air quality, flood and drainage, landscape and ecology issues. These technical reports provide the evidence against which the application must be assessed. The technical reports have been produced by professional experts and confirm that for all issues, the proposed development is acceptable. These reports and the application documents have been scrutinised by the specialist council officers and statutory consultees, including the Environment Agency, Natural England and Public Health England. All the specialist council officers and statutory consultees have confirmed that the technical information is correct and that the impacts are at acceptable levels. As such, there are no objections to the application from the specialist officers or statutory consultees. It is acknowledged that there are a lot of concerns about the traffic and lorry movements generated from the proposed development. However, the Highways Department have no objection to the proposals, which include a routing plan, which will be secured by a legal agreement and will require all traffic to turn right out of the site. 5 passing places will also be provided. On the previously approved application, the condition requiring details of the passing places was discharged, and the technical details of these passing places agreed with the Highways Department as part of the preparation of the Section 278 legal agreement. A big benefit of the proposal is the AD plant, which will treat all waste from the poultry units and neighbouring dairy farms, converting it into energy and power. The AD plant will heat the poultry units and will be able to provide free heating to the adjacent cottages. Furthermore, the excess electricity will go into the national grid, and it is estimated to supply enough electricity for up to 500 homes per annum. A further benefit of the AD plant is that it will treat both chicken and dairy manure, which will reduce odours, reduce transport movements, and ensure that the digestate byproduct is more environmentally beneficial than untreated manures. It is therefore considered that the proposed development accords with both national and local planning policies, and as such, committee is respectfully asked to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Again, I have no one indicating that they want to ask a question on what you've said. Oh, sorry, Maggie, I've got you now.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Clark, your
I
question.
couldn't get my hand up quick enough. Sorry. Yeah, if I may ask a question to Mr. Clark, you mentioned about several technical reports that you had to produce, and one thing I haven't seen is sort of the carbon footprint or balance against the business. It's that carbon equation. So I can't balance up in my mind at the moment the production against the emissions from the highways. So have you got that plan and a longer technical plan to say what your plans are for the sustainable future, i.e. using electric vehicles going forward?
Yeah, we haven't actually sort of produced a plan of that nature. Clearly, I've outlined the Nick's presentation, highlighted the environmental benefits of the total scheme, which particularly come from the AD plant. Obviously, in terms of food production, quantities of chicken are imported from places like Thailand. So even on a more strategic level, British food production is important. So potentially that would reduce air miles of some poultry coming in from places like Thailand. But in answer to your question, I don't have an overall sort of a carbon assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, Maggie. Ian Bentley, you've indicated now that you want to ask a question. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's talk about a missing section 106. Why have we got this far without a section 106?
Well, I think section 106, it's not that it's missing. It's just that, as you may know, in order to secure certain things from a legal perspective, section 106 is required. Often things are dealt with via a condition, but it's felt by the officers that the routing plan, which obviously formed part of the application, I guess they want some extra controls and measures, and therefore that's to be secured by a section 106, which of course we're happy to do. I think the routing plan is very clear. I think the Highways Department asked for a small section of a sort of additional bit of the routing plan, which again we're more than happy to go with. I don't feel that sort of needs to be made sort of publicly available before that's agreed. In truth, because that is just a legal document. The principle of it is the route. And obviously, the key thing is to make sure that the council has the power to enforce that route. Should it not be met? But obviously it will be complied with, because we realise how important that is to the correct functioning of the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I'm just going to bring Mr. Cross in. He wants to mention something.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just to clarify with regard to the position of a Section 106 agreement, lawyers in legal services don't tend to draft this agreement until we know the decision of the committee in terms of whether they wish to add in any way, shape or form to the recommendation in the committee report. Now, depending on your decision this afternoon, should you approve this application, you may wish to add anything to the requirement of what the Section 106 agreement should comply with, and as necessary, I can advise on the relevance or otherwise of such a requirement. Other than that, the decision, the Section 106 agreement will certainly reflect what's in your committee report with regard to the routing agreement. And if it would assist, given that there is a previous planning permission, and I suspect an existing Section 106 agreement that hasn't been required, that should be available, I'll ask my planning colleagues if that could be put on the planning application file in relation to this application, so people are able to see the type of provision that the Section 106 agreement will contain and what it will look like in terms of the various legal clauses that deal with notification, powers to enter into the agreement, operative provisions and things of that nature. course, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cross. Any questions for Mr. Cross? No. Ian, could you put your hand down, please? It's. Yeah, Mr. Clark. Question from me: are there contracts in place to supply all these chickens?
Yes, I believe so. There's obviously been discussions with suppliers previously, and obviously the previous permission expired, and contracts aren't formally signed until the permission is actually secured. But yeah, there is that is effectively all in place.
Yeah, so there is interest, obviously, and
there is. Yes, that's right.
Wanting the. Yeah. Just another thing you said about the 3 cottages would be supplied with power. Is that an agreement in place as well, or likely to be?
Yeah, I understand that the sort of infrastructure in terms of sort of pipes will be taken to the sort of edge of the applicant's sort of land ownership, close to those properties, but the owners would have to do the physical connection, but he's willing to put the sort of infrastructure up to the point of their houses.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. I think that's it then. Thank you for what you said. The next speaker we've got is Mrs. Brenda Seaton. You have 5 minutes, Brenda. Are you there?
Good afternoon. I am here. Yes, thank you very much. Right, I've been very interested in what I've been hearing. It seems to be in opposition to probably what I've read over the months. I do not actually oppose this application. And I note that all the agencies have no objection to the application, but I do have serious concerns about the transport and the implications on BB and the crossroads there. I do also understand that many of the journeys will be mitigated by the offshoot of journeys that already happen on there. And I think it does come down to the confidence of being able to monitor and monitor the movements of the traffic. So I would be very concerned that in the S106 agreement there wasn't that monitoring allowed there, and obviously I'd need signage that any HGVs leaving the site would have to turn right. I note in the papers that it did say that the tractor and trailer movements would not be sensible to make them all turn right, because at the moment they are turning left. And there is a lot of transport from tractor and trailer. And also the times of working. The times the transport can happen. I would not like any evening or late transport of the HGVs. But overall, on the fact that it's been passed before and the other agencies don't have any objections, and really, if the S106 agreement enforces and gives us confidence in monitoring and enforcing the application and the transport movement, as I say, I have no objections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Seaton. I don't think anybody's got any questions for you. With that, we'll move on to the final speaker then. That's Simon Galton. Simon, are you there? Are you online?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. So Mrs. Seaton's referred to what happens when you turn left out of the site. If you turn right out of the site, you go into my division, Hungerton, Keam, Bilston and Scraptoff area. So she doesn't want the lorries to turn left, and I'd rather they didn't turn right, but we've got to deal with the situation as it is. So my concerns are limited to two issues, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, to the impact of the traffic and the HGV movements, and secondly, the landscape and visual impact, both of which are referred to in the report. On the HGV issues, many years ago, we had a long campaign to get a weight restriction through Keam on Ingesby Lane and out to Bilston and all the side roads between Scraptoff. That was supported and was deemed necessary at the time. And anyone who knows that road network along Hungerton Lane, and then a very tight bend as you arrive at Keam, and then another one up at the Bilston Coplow, the roads are very rural in nature, very narrow. The edges of the carriageway break away on a regular basis and have to be repaired. It's very difficult for two vehicles to pass. Yes, there'll be these passing bays, but what happens when vehicles meet away from the passing bays? Someone's going to have to do quite a lot of reversing if this is going to work. The bend at the road junction at Keam is very, very difficult. There has been accidents there. I'm surprised that they're not listed. There was a fatality on Ingesby Road not that many years ago. There's also concern about the environmental impact of the lorry movements, particularly during this the peak cycle, the 2-day period, when there'll be significant more lorry movements during the time. Now, it's my understanding from the last application that the removal is done at night for obvious reasons, but that in itself is likely to be more disturbing to people that live in the area. So yes, first concern is around HGV movements and the traffic going out to Bilston from the site. And then the landscape and visual impact analysed in paragraphs 80 and 81 of the officer's report. I just would point out that this is an attractive area of countryside and listed in national documentation about the importance. So it's said that it is in open countryside. There will be views of it from key vantage points where people walk in and around the Keam and Hungerton area. And I'm sorry, but I just don't agree that flare stacks of 9.5 metres high is not going to have a negative impact on the area and on the countryside. So those are my two concerns. I would just finally, Chairman, refer to the objections. 97 objections from 3 small parishes in the area. That is a very high level of concern. And I really don't feel that paragraph 70 of the officer's report does that justification. Any members and member of a borough or district planning committee, I know from experience, we spend hours and hours setting out these objections in considerable detail, so members have the full impact, not verbatim, but a really good summary, not one-line bullet points of the type that are difficult to understand how strongly people concern and feel about this. So those are my concerns that I would like to put on record. I have one technical question for the officers around the environmental impact statement. That, of course, was done for the last application, not this one. And I have been asked the question, how long are they valid for? Things, as members have heard, do change, the climate concerns and so on. So I would ask, I've tried to research on that on the internet. The best I could find was that they're valid for 5 years, but I would like some advice on that, whether it's acceptable to use one that's so out of date. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Galton. That's the end of my speakers list. Now turning back to members, really, but I'm going to ask Nick Bowden. Can you answer the question that Mr. Galton has just asked?
Certainly. This is regarding the relevance of the EIA and the degree to which it's been updated or reused. Certainly, yes, the EIA and environmental statement is largely a reworking of the 2015 application. That having been said, it has been updated, various chapters to reflect changes in policy, various other technical reports that go with the application have also been updated. So it is not completely out of date. It has been updated to reflect current circumstances, but nevertheless, yes, does remain. I'm not going to say a repeat, but it has its similarities to the 2015 application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowden. Right, open to members, and I've got Mr. Phillimore, your hand is up. I'm not sure at what point that you've taken it down now.
No, it's fine, Chairman. I was just happily waiting for the registered speakers to finish. So my questions really are for the officer and the officer alone, please. 2 or 3 areas. One of the speakers mentioned a watercourse pond and protected species. So I'd like to understand the validity of what the speaker has confirmed compared to what the planning application has confirmed. Clearly, if it's a protected species, then we're in a very different set of discussions and considerations. I'm sure I've read amongst all the documentation and the representative letters a reference to other fuel supplies for the anaerobic facility. Are those vehicle movements included in the impact assessment of traffic, or is it just the HGVs relating to moving the chickens? And then yeah, I'm very intrigued about the cumulative impact on the EIA, and I will pull out, and it's in, I think, one of the representative letters. 1,200 homes are in the scrapped off SDA, and it is indicated, I haven't read that particular report, that will include traffic calming measures on this very specific road. I'm picking up, I think with Mr. Galton, I have a question here about the passing places. Is the road itself able to carry 2 HGVs in the opposing directions at all times? Or are those passing places absolute necessity? And if they are, what is the minimum distance if they meet halfway that one's got to reverse? So very specific questions to the officer, please, Chair.
Okay. Okay, Nick, are you able to have a go at those questions from Mr. Phillimore, please?
I will do my best. In terms of the the pond, I have to say I'm not aware of a pond being within the distance of the site, as was stated in the environmental statement. I can't add anything beyond that, to be honest with you. Not being aware of it, I've got no special reason to dispute what the application material says. As mentioned, our internal consultees as well, they did not highlight it either. So if it is something that has been missed, it's not deliberate, it's something that we are simply not aware of. In terms of the movements of vehicles for fuel supplies, yes, my understanding is that that is included in the total number of movements that was included in the applicant statement. In terms of the cumulative impact and traffic calming, the scrapped off SDA is quite a substantial distance from the site. I mean, I make it well over a mile. I will have to confess, again, I'm not completely familiar with the detail of that particular application. However, I would be very surprised if it did include traffic calming measures down Hungerton Lane, especially given its distance to the site. I wouldn't be surprised if that scheme did not have some form of traffic calming measures in the wider area, but I would be surprised if that was along Hungerton Lane. In terms of the passing places, if it's all right with you, I'd like to defer to my colleague in Highways, Rebecca, who I think is here. Is that okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, please, yes, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, so the applicant is proposing a series of passing bays as previous speakers have mentioned along Hungerton Lane. These are located at 5 identified locations where the road does narrow. So they're spread out, not equidistant throughout the route, but spread out in the places where the road narrows to its narrowest point. So to enable the 2 vehicles to pass.
Thank you. Next.
Chairman, can I come back on that because the question's not been answered?
Go on then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Carry on then, Mr. Fennell.
Sorry, Chair. The question hasn't been answered. Can 2 HGVs pass on that road? Yes or no? And if they can't, how far apart are those passing places that would allow 2 HGVs to pass? And therefore, you know, how far would one have to reverse if they met smack bang in the middle? So it's a reasonable question if we're discussing HGV traffic down a small country lane. Thank you, Chairman.
Nick.
I think I'm going to have to pass this to Rebecca again. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Thought you might, but I thought I'd come to you first.
Apologies if I didn't answer your question in the first instance. As far as I'm aware, there's a proposal for the 5 bays which would allow 2 HGVs to pass. I'm not aware that other than those 5 locations that have been identified along the route that it isn't possible for 2 HGVs to pass.
Okay, Mr. Fillmore.
I think I just need to confirm with Rebecca then. So you're saying that the road is wide enough in its entirety for 2 HGVs to pass side by side?
As far as I am aware, the road is, and the identified pinch points are where the bays are to be provided.
Aha, right. Thank you. It's a pinch point rather than, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. The next speaker I've got then is Michael Charlesworth. Michael.
Thank you, John. I remember it must have been not 4 or 5 years ago doing the site visit to this, and we had a good look at that place. And the entrance was of a concern then. It still is now. I probably asked the question then. Some of the movements are for manure. I presume the chickens feed on the manure in some way, apart from the normal chicken feed. We passed it last time. I remember some objections last time, but I think we did the right thing. Personally, I think this sort of farming is very unethical, and I personally disagree with it strongly, but I'm not here for my personal views. So I won't say I'm happy to let it go forward, but yeah, it needs to be approved today, sadly. Thank you.
Are you moving something, Michael, or just agreeing to this one?
No, I'm not going to move it, Chair.
No. Okay, thank you. Sean Sheehan, you're next on my list.
Yes, Chair. It's a question for one of the officers.
Yeah.
To what extent has the principle of development been established, given that we've had changes in guidance and policy over the intervening years since this was first considered in 2016? And small apology to you, Chair. I suggested that you might have been present at that meeting in March 2016. In fact, I confused the attendance list with the membership list, so you weren't actually there.
No.
Mr. Charlesworth was.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got a question then, Sean?
Indeed, that's what I started with, and it was for the officers about the principle of development. To what extent has it been established, given the developments in policy and guidance that have occurred in the intervening period?
Okay.
Chairman, happy to answer this one. Obviously there was a previous planning permission on this site, which is now lapsed and hasn't been implemented. So this planning application clearly is very similar to what was previously approved, and if granted would effectively extend the time for when the permission can be implemented. So in terms of what weight can be applied, it's a good question. clearly it's a material consideration that permission has fairly recently been granted. We just need to bear in mind that there has been a change of policy since then in terms of the new Minerals and Waste Local Plan, but also the National Planning Policy Framework. What I would say is that the information that's contained within the report sets out that while there has been changes in policy, we don't believe that the circumstances have materially changed to justify a change in the outcome and the decision, and that's why we're recommending to you that the planning permission be granted, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you for answering that. Sean, are you content with that?
That's what the kind of answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bill Crooks. Are you there, Bill?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. I've got one or two questions and then a comment to make. If I could ask the questions first and then come back with the comment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First question is, as I read it, it's about 0.6 of a mile from BB. Is that right? That's my first question. Second one is the flare stack. Is that to burn off methane? That's my second question. Third one was about the environmental impact assessment. It was said that it had been updated, but according to BB Parish Council, in a very long statement that I read online from them, they are saying that it hasn't been updated. And I didn't really hear the question answered on how long these assessments lasted. And if then, and the other one was about the passing points. I've got a road in my area very similar to this that the county put passing points in some time ago because of large vehicles going down there. And they're never at the place where the passing points are, and they don't back up. They go off the grass verge. They break all the edge of the road up. There's big ruts in the side, and I can't get nobody to do anything about it. So I don't think these passing points are the idea, because on the map, they look a long way apart. That's my questions, and then I've got a comment, if I may, Chairman.
All right. Well, I think there's about 5 questions there. Nick, would you like to have a go at
Chairman, if it's okay, I'll start off, answer the first question, then I'll pass on to Nick Bowden to perhaps answer the question around the distance from BB and also the methane question, and then the highway question we'll pass over to Rebecca. So I think there's 4 questions there, Mr. Crooks. Just in terms of the environmental impact assessment question, the requirement is that if a planning application is a type of development that requires an environmental statement under the EIA regulations, then the requirement is that the statement that is submitted is sufficiently robust and up to date to set out the environmental impacts of that development and what the mitigation is required to address any impacts that arise as part of that development. There isn't a specific timescale on when that information becomes out of date, and that's a matter of judgment for us as the local planning authority to determine whether or not certain aspects of the statement have become out of date and need updating. And you'll have heard a few moments ago Mr. Bowden explaining that the applicant has acknowledged that there are certain aspects that did become out of date from the 2015 document, and they have been updated. We have obviously scrutinised that document closely. We've sent it off to consultees, and we're comfortable that the information that's contained in terms of the impacts and the mitigation is sufficiently up to date to allow us to make that assessment. But it's a judgment. The technical consultations were carried out with other specialists, such as the Environment Agency, such as our ecology colleagues, that they're all comfortable that the information contained is sufficiently up to date. And in that regard, I'm comfortable that it is sufficiently up to date and robust to allow an assessment to be made. I'm just going to pass over then to Nick Bowden just to answer the other 2 questions about the distance from BB and also the flare stack, and then we'll pass over to Rebecca about the passing places. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, just to confirm, it obviously depends where exactly in BB you take the distance from, but 0.6 miles is approximately the right sort of distance from the site to the village of BB. The flare stack itself is there. It's largely a safety feature. So it's if there is a build-up of gases that are due to be burnt, that is there as a release valve effectively. So that will be, yes, potentially depositing methane into the atmosphere, but it is a safety feature. So it is not the kind of thing that you go see at, say, for example, an oil rig with a large flame coming out the top of it. It's a safety feature that will be used, I would imagine, relatively infrequently when there is that buildup of pressure and it has to be vented for safety purposes. Hopefully that answers your question, and I'll pass on to Rebecca.
Thank you, Nick. In terms of the passing bays, they are identified at the most appropriate locations that we consider necessary. In terms of HGV movements, the development or the existing farm currently generates a number of HGV movements that is predicted to increase with the proposal. The peak of the HGV movements is when the manure is due to be removed from site, which peaks at 10 HGV movements in the applicant's submission. So I suppose then we need to look at what is the possibility of two of those meeting, and it is potentially an infrequent occurrence, but the bays are there to facilitate that passing should it happen at the same time.
Thank you, Nick and Rebecca. Mr. Crooks, are you content with those answers? And you said you'd got something you wanted to say as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought that the manure was going to be put into this digester. I didn't realise that they were carting it away. If that's the case, why are we having this digester? So I'm a bit baffled on that one. But what I was going to say, Chair, I've got one of these in my division, one of these chicken farms. And to be honest, I've been down and had a look round it. I got an invite down there to have a look. And yeah, I mean, it's done as good as it can be. But every 5 or 6 weeks, when the cycle is coming to an end, it's absolutely foul down there. It stinks awful. And especially in the summer, there's flies and blue bottles and you name it, everywhere. It really is a bad situation. The question I was asking about BB, half a mile with the wind in the wrong direction, they're going to get a dose of that every half a dozen weeks. And the other thing I was going to say was that the cottagers, I understand that they're going to get free heating or power or whatever, but what happens when they change hands, you know? And that is possible. That's if they're ever able to sell them with that lot next door to them. I don't know. But certainly it could cause a problem in the future. I personally am not happy with it at all, Chair, but that's up to other members, you know, to make their decision. But thank you for that, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Maggie Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I agree with Bill. I'm not happy with it at all, but I think the precedent, it was passed, in 2016. My concern is the mitigation of smell. Like Bill, I have one of these in my division, and all waste products do smell, and there will be a time when it will smell. And, for me, I think there needs to be something written very strongly in any conditions about mitigation, timetables and monitoring. So if we could have a look at that, if it is passed this afternoon, there really needs to be some mitigation put in. My overwhelming concern, though, on this, it purports to be a green project, but for me, I can't see the balance. I haven't got this balance. Okay, it's a digester, it's producing energy, but this is really the balance of the carbon emissions and these lorries going forward. And that's why I asked earlier about what is the long-term plan. And I can't see any plan in there. What is the sustainability for this project going forward? What if the contracts suddenly stop? what, you know, where is the commitment for getting lorries that are electric powered or something like that? I mean, and that is my overwhelming concern. I suppose that's more of a comment, but if there's anything, I put this to the officers, that could be done to see some commitment from the actual applicants for this going forward, I suppose it would ease my conscience a little bit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Nick, are you able to comment on what Mrs. Wright has just said?
Chairman, if I may, I'll just make a couple of comments. I don't know if colleagues wanted to add anything, but I mean, it is a valid point in terms of what Mrs. Wright has just raised, and I understand what the concern is. I guess when we're dealing with planning applications, we have to assess what the policy context is. That there is no requirement when we consider these types of planning applications to make sure that an operator carries out their operations and moves goods around in a way that is environmentally friendly or ideally carbon neutral, which is what we all want to be aspiring to longer term. And there is policies within the development plan and within the national planning policy framework to strive towards reducing carbon. Ultimately, that, you know, we are all aiming towards carbon neutrality in the near future. But there is the County Council's climate change emergency is ahead of national policy in that regard. National policy doesn't say by a certain date operations, new businesses need to be operating zero carbon. So we're in a bit of a difficult situation from that point of view. It is absolutely a valid point, and longer term, I suspect planning policy will change, but we can only make decisions in line with what we're dealing with at the moment. It's certainly a conversation we can have with the operator, but we can't include that in any Section 106 agreement or planning condition. I don't know whether that answers your question, but it's not an easy one.
Reluctantly, Nikki, it does. I don't think it answers my question or settles my feelings, but thank you for your contribution.
Thank you, Maggie. Janice Richards. Janice?
Thank you, Chair. My question's been asked, so that's why I lowered my hand, Chairman. Thank you.
I didn't want you to think I was leaving you out, Janice. Mr. Phillimore, you're back again with another question, I take it.
I am. If I can go back to the officer again, please. Yes. I may be able to help on the question about water. I've been asking my trusted friend, unnamed search browser, who has an Earth thing, but it relates to page 8, part B, main report, where you've got your schematic drawing with the site layout. If you can let me know when you've got it.
Yes, I do have that in front of me.
Yeah, so red line, blue line, southwest. There would appear to be a pond and a brook. And according to that unnamed search browser, there is a copse there as well. So I guess the question is, right, you know, picking up on the speaker's point about protected species. There clearly would be a stream, as far as I can work out on your drawing, in that southwest corner, with a pond above. Is that too close enough or too far away for the consideration about protected species and water contamination, etc., to be considered within the planning application?
My comment previously was purely in respect of great crested newts. Again, I'm going to caveat this by saying I'm not an ecologist, so don't take my comments as set in stone. But my understanding is that great crested newts typically don't inhabit moving watercourses such as the Barkby Brook, which I think does run down towards, like you say, the southwest of the site. I believe that was considered and mentioned in various documentation that was submitted with the application. That would have been the ecologically relevant stuff and the matters which were covering environmental impacts and pollution. And as has been previously mentioned, again, these are things that would have been covered by our consultees and would have been, I would have taken advice from them. So you're not taking this information from the horse's mouth. Certainly, just looking at the aerial imagery, which I've just pulled up on the screen, it does appear that, yes, there is a pond of some description. I would, just having a quick measure of it, it does appear to be, I would say, it comes out to minus 510 meters, just as a very rough distance. So although it's close, it would still fall outside that 500 meter radius.
Okay.
I don't know if Nick, did you want to say something else on that?
Yeah, thank you for that. If that's okay, Chairman. The issues to do with ecology and biodiversity are set out in the report, and I'm just having a glance now. I think it's paragraph 84, and also we have the ecologist comments in the report as well, where they set out paragraph 59 and 60 what the position is. And you'll see that they've looked at this, both the applicant and the County Council's ecologists, and determined there are no designated sites of national, international or local level within the site. So this has been looked at, and both by the applicant but also independently by the County Council's ecologists, and they've reached that conclusion. Clearly there's been representations about this, and we understand that there is that sensitivity locally. But we need to rely upon the experts that have made the recommendations, and the position is that they're comfortable that, subject to the conditions in the report, the effects on ecology biodiversity are acceptable.
That, Nick, I fully understand. It's all got to be dealt with in planning terms, and the technical side of that. Personally, I absolutely hate battery farms with a passion. And my, one half of my family come from farming stock. However, I think there is also the existing issue, which the officers alluded to earlier, and I think other members of this panel, is that there is a precedent already been set where planning approval has previously been given for this site. And reality, I think the applicant could have come back before the permissions expired and asked for an extension. They clearly didn't. But I do think we're kind of stuck with the precedent that's already been set. So not giving any clue which way I'm going to vote. I just hate battery farms. So, but back to you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, officers.
Oh, thank you. Bill Licorice. Are you there, Bill?
I am, Chairman. Yes, thank you very much.
Good to hear.
Like Councillor Charlesworth, I was involved with this back in 2016, and we visited the site. I have to say that I have to refer to page 19, paragraph 74. Where it says, unless I can find any substantial differences in the applications from then and now, I have to go along with it, I'm afraid. I've listened to everything that's said. I feel sorry for the people who live round there, but I still have to go along with the officer's recommendation on this. I'm prepared to take any condition that, like Mrs. Wright said, needs strengthening, if you want to look at that. But I'll move for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks very much. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Mr. Fillion. Mr. Gill. Thank you, Tony. Did you want to speak? Or?
No, I'm happy with what Bill said. Happy to take considerations of colleagues on board as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, well, I'm going to move to a vote now. Then I think we've covered a pretty good area this afternoon. I'm going to ask you and if he'll go around the room, or all members, and ask which way they'd want to vote. Obviously, if you're for, you're for the recommendation. If you're against it, you're against the recommendation. So, Ewan, would you do a roll call for me, please?
I think Mrs. Richardson wants to say something. Mrs. Richardson wants to say something.
Janice, did you want to speak now? This is right.
Sorry, I thought Mrs. Louise Richardson had her hand up, but it's gone down now, so perhaps she doesn't want to speak.
Maggie, your hand's up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say, you know, if we go to the vote, if we could take on board about the conditions and try and strengthen the conditions up, as long as after the vote, or you know, we do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure the officers have heard what's been said, Maggie. Right, okay then, we'll move to the vote again. Ewan, please.
Yeah, can we just check that last point, because the conditions are as set out in the report. So if you want a change of conditions, you'll need to propose different conditions. Anthony, do you agree with that?
Yeah, thanks, Stu, and thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think to be clear to members, you currently have the conditions the officers are recommending. It's up to you really to indicate whether you wish additional conditions to be placed on the permission if it's approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Had you anything different, Maggie, that you wanted to condition then?
Well, I just wanted, if possible, I don't know how we'd do it because I've not come across this before, but I would really want something to go in that there is a definite commitment from the applicant to the green agenda and the sustainability going forward on this project, you know, because I can't see anything in anything I've seen or read today, and that's my concern. And also about the mitigations and close monitoring of the spreading of the digestate when it's put on the field, so local parish councils and that are aware when spreading takes place and can have a liaison committee or something to help mitigate against it.
I'll just get Mr. Cross to comment and then Maggie on what's
Thank
possible.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just defer to planning colleagues whether they consider this is the type of issue that's been raised by Mrs. Wright that could be covered by a note to applicant that will be to the permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Nick, could you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was going to suggest that actually, just in respect to both of those elements. Happy to have the discussions and also happy to put something on as an informative on as part of the planning decision if members are minded to approve today. I think there's all sorts of ways that you can get the applicant to commit to the green agenda going forward, and I think it needs that engagement and discussion to sort of partly to see what they've got in mind, but also so we can encourage them to do this in the most sustainable way possible. So yeah, as I say, happy to have the conversation if members are minded to approve.
Thanks, Maggie. Bill and Tony, are you happy to include that in your recommendation to permit?
Yes, Chairman. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Phillimore, did you want to come back or are you... No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, I did, Chair. And it is to do with the condition. So I'm just double checking if the officers can help us. And it would be a condition. So relating to the hours of work, I'm reading preparation construction activities. Okay, that's fine. I'm desperately trying to scan through the document about the actual hours of work for the site itself, for the facility, especially and particularly vehicle movements overnight that was been mentioned earlier. So do we have that detail, officers?
Nick.
I think it would be very difficult for us to actually impose any sort of restriction in terms of hours of use and hours of operation on the site, simply because this is a 24-hour operation. Chances are that the amount of activity occurring overnight is going to be fairly limited. But I'm just trying to think through my head how we are going to construct an appropriately worded condition that restricts what they can do outside certain hours, but remains reasonable and enforceable. And I can't think of anything. I did, to be honest with you, go through this process when we were constructing this report as to whether there would be some provision that we could put in there to say such and such activities cannot occur at such and such a time, but it would be very difficult to do so without almost rendering the facility impracticable. If there is, for example, some sort of welfare emergency, we cannot restrict people from going onto that site in the interest of welfare. If there is a safety issue, we can't restrict people from going on there to resolve a safety issue. No. Beyond that, in terms of vehicle movements,
that's the one that I'm interested in. It's HGV movements after what would be normal working hours. You know, if we're going to put the conditions there for the construction side of the business, should those same conditions not apply for the actual HGV movements of the working farm? You know, at the end of the day, we do have to consider the impact on the neighbours in the neighbouring villages, and we don't want HGVs running in and out of those villages at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, we have to have consideration and compassion for those residents. So there must be a way of conditioning the hours of work of vehicle movements on the highway.
Theoretically, yes, there is. We could indeed impose such conditions and frequently do so. In this particular instance, though, the applicant has explicitly stated that they would be doing those operations at those early hours in the morning. And yes, there would be HGVs running around the local area at early hours of the morning. Accordingly, I don't believe, and I'll defer to my colleagues to a certain extent, that we could impose such conditions, seeing as the applicant has almost explicitly requested those conditions. It would be tantamount to a refusal of permission to all intents and purposes.
Thomas, did you want to come in, Nick? Or...
Yeah, no, thank you, Chairman. I was just going to comment on this. It is difficult because the applicant has applied for the business to operate unrestricted. I think in reality, you're not going to see a lot of HGV movements at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's just not going to be commercially viable to run at those sorts of times. I just can't see that happening in reality. However, you know, happy to go away and have a conversation with the applicant about that to properly understand whether that's a problem. And perhaps what we could do is perhaps come back to yourself, Chair, and perhaps the spokesperson in consultation with Mr. Phillimore, perhaps to sort of try and see if there's a way of restricting that a little bit tighter. I don't know whether Mr. Cross thinks that's a lawful approach, but it's something that we've done before. If it's not going to constrain the business, then the difficulty we have though with that suggestion is if they say that will constrain the business and that's not what they're applying for, then we need to bring it back to committee, which of course will mean a delay. I don't know if Mr. Cross wants to comment on that as an idea.
Mr. Cross, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's a very sensible suggestion that Nick has made. It's covered in the scheme of delegation with regard to decision making, and it enables you and the Vice Chair and the spokes, with an involvement of Mr. Phillimore, to see what's possible. The officers having spoken with the applicant. But I think the point must be made, and I must emphasise this, as you've heard from the officer, this is an application for unrestricted use, and that's what the applicant is asking for. And you have to decide whether you wish to approve or not this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cross.
Mr. Chairman, can I come back?
This is going to be the last time, Mr. Phillimore.
Well, that's your prerogative, Mr. Chairman, but we are in a debate. I'm happy for that. I mentioned earlier, my family come from farming stock, so I understand the challenges of farming behaviour. The only additional request I would then put, Nick, is that is a way forward. It allows us and ensures that we are taking our neighbouring residential impact into consideration and wider in consideration. But could I also invite, if they wish to join, the 2 divisional councillors who are actually patch this is? It's not my patch. I just wondered if the 2 directly affected division members would want to attend that discussion.
Yes, I don't see a problem with that, Mr. Phillimore, to include local members. No, I think it's perhaps a good idea to do that.
I would welcome that. Thank you.
Yeah, Okay. We'll move to the vote again then, please. Ewan, if you'd do the honours.
Okay, Mr. Bentley.
Regrettably, 4.
Mr. Charlesworth.
4.
Mr. Coxon. 4. Mr. Crooks. Mr. Crooks, are you for or against?
Yeah, against, Chairman.
Ran over.
Multitasking, I'm impressed.
Mr. Campbell.
Against.
We're going to get Julie.
Mr. Gillard.
4.
Mr. Licorice.
4.
Mr. Phillimore.
With the precedent already set, well, I have no choice but to approve the officer's recommendation.
Mrs. Janice Richards.
Morally, I'm against this, but obviously, like a few have commented, members, we're not here as personal reasons. So, having listened to all the officers' recommendations, I will go for. Thank you, Chairman.
Louise Richardson.
4.
Mr. Sheehan.
4.
Mrs. Maggie Wright.
Reluctantly 4.
Okay, that means the motion is passed. 10 for and 2 against. Thank you.
Yes, that's what I make it as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the contributions to that. It's been a good meeting. Item 8, going back to the agenda, then is, I've already said that there is no urgent items. Item 9 is Chairman's announcement. I've really got nothing to announce other than to say thank you and thank you for attending this afternoon. And the next board meeting is on the 11th of March. Thank you very much. Thanks for attending.
Thank you, John.
Chairman. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, officers.